Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today, Mir Hashem, we're going to be finishing Maseches Horiyos. We're starting in the middle of the Daf, maybe a third of the way down, I should say, in Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. And as you can see, we have a lot of this page left and a lot of the next page left, and a small amount in Yud Dalet Amud Aleph. I hope you've davened Marv. Let's get started. Ha'ish kodem le'isha lahachayos lahashev aveda. A man takes precedence over a woman in regards to lahachayos for survival, and also for hashavas aveda. A woman does take precedence over a man for clothing, and as well, if a woman is being held captive and a man, the woman is to be taken out first because we're afraid that she may be violated. However, when the men and women are equal and that both of them can be violated, if the captors would violate him just the same, then they're back to even footing, and we go back to the Reisha of the Mishnah, Ha'ish kodem le'isha. Says the Gemara, Tana Rabbanon, Hayahuv Aviv Rabo B'Shevi. If a person, his father and his Rebbe were all held captives, who kodem l'Rabo, I can save myself first because Chayecha kodem l'Chayecha Vercha. Then V'Rabo kodem l'Aviv, my Rebbe would be before my father. But if my mother was there, imo kodemes l'Kulam, the mother goes first. Chacham kodem l'Melech Yisrael, a person who's wise goes before a king of Israel. Chacham shemes, if a chacham dies, ein lo kayotebo, there is no replacing a chacham. This is a side point. Melech Yisrael shemes, kol Yisrael ru'yim l'malchus. But when it comes to a Melech Yisrael, anyone can become king. Not everyone can become a chacham. It's a fascinating thing. So right,
Be the other way
it's
around.
natural.
Exactly. That doesn't make sense.
What?
Anyone could become a chacham.
Yeah. You should be a chacham. You sit down and learn.
Yeah.
This is talking about Melech Yisrael, not Malchus Beis David. It's Melech Yisrael. It's not talking about Malchus Beis David, and anyone could become king under those circumstances. But the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you cannot always grasp. That's something, Ki Hashem Yitain Chachma, like that's not always up to us. Whatever wisdom we think we can, you could learn a lot of information, you could know stuff, but to be a Chacham, that's a gift. That's not something that is earned. I don't think it's something that's earned. But that's what the Gemara says. Melech kodem lekohen gadol. A melech is going to take precedence over a kohen gadol. Shneimar vayomer ha melech lehem kichuim machem avdei adonechem v'chulei. So we see that the melech is referenced first. Kohen gadol is kodem lenavi. Shneimar mashach oso sham tzadok hakohen v'nasan lenavi. Hiktim tzadok lenasan. Vayomer, and the pasuk says Shmana Yehoshua hakohen hagadol ata v're'echa. Who's first? The kohen before his friends. So says the Gemara, Yachal Hedyotos, how maybe these friends, the Re'echa, were regular people? No. Talmud Omar Ki Anshe Mofes Hema, they were people who could do miracles. Vein Mofes El Navi, and a person who can pull off a Mofes, that person must be a Navi. How do we know? Shnamav Nasan Elecha Oso Mofes, that the someone a Navi Sheker, that if he would do this action of a Mofes, which shows you that a real Navi can do a Mofes. So that's why when we look back at the pasuk, it's Kohen Gadol is Kodem Lenavi. If you have two Kohanim Gedolim, one became a Kohen Gadol with the Shemen HaMishcha, the other became a Kohen Gadol only with the Meruba Begadim, only by wearing the 8 different garments. So the Mashiach B'Shemen takes precedence. Meruba Begadim Kodem LeMashiach She'avar Machmas Kerio. The Meruba Begadim, if he became a Kohen Gadol through the Shmona Begadim, he is before the Mashiach She'avar if he was replacing someone who saw Keri. Mashiach Sha'avar Machmas Kerio, the Mashiach Sha'avar who became Tami because of Keri, he's Kodem Le'avar Machmas Mumo. He takes precedence over a Kohen Sha'avar who had a mum. Avar Machmas Mum Kodem Mashiach Milchama. This Kohen Gadol who was a replacement because of a mum, he takes precedence over the Mashiach Milchama, the Kohen Gadol that goes out with war. Mashiach Milchama Kodem L'Skan. Mashiach Milchama takes precedence over the Skan. Skan Kodem LeAmarkol. My Amarkol. What is this person Amarkol? Amar Chizda Amar Kula. He says everything, meaning he's kind of like running the show. So the Skan is greater than he is. Amar kol kodem legizbar. This person's more important than the treasurer. Gizbar kodem lerosh mishmar. The gizbar is more important than the person who's in charge of a particular mishmar. Rosh mishmar kodem lerosh beisav. The rosh mishmar takes precedence over the rosh beisav, the person who's in charge of a particular family. Rosh beisav kodem lekohen hedyot, and the kohen hedyot is the last in the line. A little bit surprising. I wouldn't have necessarily thought the kohen hedyot is even lesser than the rosh beisav, but that's what it says. What about a case of meis mitzvah to become tamei? Skan mashuach milchama izmin kodem. We have the skan or the mashuach milchama. Which one of them should become tamei? Amar Marzut Shabed Rav Nachman Tashma. Let's check a brisa. The Tanan, the Tanya, excuse me, 2/3 of the way down, you'd gimel amad aleph, skan u'mashuach milchama shayim mahalchim aderech upag b'meis mitzvah. Let's say you have the skan and the mashuach milchama, the one who goes out to war, and they bump into a dead body that they're supposed to bury. Mutav shit mashuach milchama ve'al yit maskan. Better that the mashuach milchama, the one who goes out to war, better he should become tamei than the skan. She'im yeh rabo psul b'kohen gadol, because if in fact the kohen gadol were to have become tamei, nichnas askan mishamish tachtav. The skan has to do avoda. What happens if you have no kohen gadol? You're done. You're okay. That's a very big problem. No one can go into certain parts of the Beis Hamikdash unless you're the kohen gadol. They can't do certain avodas unless you're the kohen gadol. So more important that the skan should be protected. How can you say that? V'atanya mashuach milchama kodem l'skan. You can't say that. They have a brisa that says the mashuach milchama takes precedence over the skan. So that's a big problem. So the Gemara says no. Amar Rabbeinu Kitanya lachiosa. One's talking about lachiosa, the other is talking about to become tamei. So the cases are not really comparable in the two brisas. So there's no stira. That was sponsored by David Merzel, by the way. That whole first Mishnah, it's all for you. I did not give shiur tonight. Next, what? Well, the microphone doesn't reach so far. Seriously, absolutely right. Oh. Yeah. Pronouns are they and they, them. Yeah. Okay, new Mishnah. We're 2/3, 3/4 of the way down. You Gimel Amud Aleph. Kohen kodem leLevi, Levi leYisrael, Yisrael leMamzer, uMamzer leNasin, v'Nasin leGer, leGer leEved Meshuchrar. And Amasai, when is this true? That this pecking order is correct? Is Man Shekul and Shavin. That's true when everyone is equals. Aval. Im haya mamzer talmud chacham, the kohen gadol am haaretz. Mamzer talmud chacham kodem the kohen gadol am haaretz. Yeah, oh yeah, it's taka true. Is that the last Mishnah? That's great. That's great. That's a really gewaltig Mishnah. Obviously, we see here, of course, the importance of Talmud Torah relative even to the status of a kohen gadol. You got two people who are not equals. You have a mamzer and a kohen gadol, but the mamzer is a lamdan. So fine. I don't know how you become a kohen gadol as an amoras, but he's an amoras. Yeah, these things exist, but still, it's just you have to know what you're doing. There's a lot of Torah to know. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says over here. So let us jump into the Gemara. Going kodem leLevi, how do we know Shneimar b'nei Amram Aharon Moshe v'Yavdel Aharon Kodesh Kodashim? Levi shekam kodem leYisrael. How do we know that that's true? Shneimar b'Yisi Hivdil Hashem es Shevet HaLevi mitoch v'chule. So Shevet Levi is better. Yisrael kodem leMamzer. How do we know? Shezeh miyuchas v'zeh ino miyuchas. One of them has good lineage. That's the Yisrael. One of them has pretty bad lineage. That's the Mamzer. That's his parents did something wrong. Mamzer kodem leNasin. How do we know zeh pamitipa kshera? At least the Mamzer, much as it's an illicit relationship, but it's a tipa kshera. But the Nasin, we assume over here that he's zeh pamitipa psula. Going? That's not right. Nasin kodem leger. That's really interesting. A full ger. Why would we say that? Zeh gadol imanu b'kedusha, v'zeh lo gadol imanu b'kedusha. One of them grew up a yid. One of them did not grow up a yid. Ger kodem levin meshuchrar. Why is that true? Zeh haya bichlal arur. The Eved Meshuchrar is in the category of Arur. V'zeh lo haya bichlal arur. The ger is not considered to be Arur. Emasai bizman shekul and shavin. We had said at the taich of our Mishnah was that's only true if everyone is on a level playing field. But if the mamzer knows more Torah, not knows more, if the mamzer is a lamdan and the kohen gadol is not, so then the mamzer takes precedence. You know what I mean? How do we know this is true? Amar Ravacha b'Reb Chanina, Tamar Kra Yikara He Mipeninim. She is, in this case, it's she. It's actually a reference to a Talmud Chacham. The Talmud Chacham is Yikara from Peninim. Mikoin gadol shenichnas lifnai v'lifnim. A play on words. Peninim lifnai v'lifnim. So that's where a little bit of a play on words are. That's where the pasuk teaches us that a Talmud Chacham is better than a Kohen Gadol. I don't care what you are. You could be a mamzer. You could be a lot of things. If you're a Talmud Chacham, you take precedence over a Kohen Gadol. Tanya, Rashbi Omer, Bedin hu sheyaktim eved v'shuchrar leger. Really, an eved v'shuchrar should take precedence over a ger. Shezeh gadol imana b'kedusha, v'zeh lo gadol imana b'kedusha. Because the eved meshuchrar, he's an eved ivri, so at least he has Jewish status. Elazeh haya b'chlal ara, v'zeh lo haya b'chlal ara. Except that the din of the eved meshuchrar is that they really are begeder arur, and therefore they are not put in front of the ger. The ger is put in front of them. Sha'alu talmida ves Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Tzadok. They asked him, why is it that people are willing to marry a giores, but no one's willing to marry a meshuchreres, and a woman who used to be a shivcha? Amar lahem, he responded, Rebbe Lazar bar Reb Tzadok said to his talmidim, Zu haisa bechlal arer, v'zu haisa bechlal arer, v'zu lo haisa bechlal arer. One, the meshuchreres has a din of arer. We've seen the same idea 3 times. Davar acher, zu haya bechezkas shomer, v'zu lo haisa bechezkas shomer. One was shomer, the other one was not shomer. So for whatever the reason, we do not marry, or people did not marry a meshuchreres. And this question is totally out of left field. It's just asked by the same person. We're 3 lines from the bottom and Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Let's continue. The Gemara says, Shalu Talmidei B'S Rabbi Elazar, Mipnei ma kelev makir es kono v'chatul eno makir es kono. Why is it that dogs recognize their master, but when it comes to cats, they don't recognize their master? Why would that be the case? So it says the Gemara as follows. Amar leinu ma ochel mima she'achbar ochel mishakeach. If you eat from that which a mouse ate, you'll lose your memory. So let's say there's a piece of cheese that a mouse ate, and then you took a bite out of it. That's not good. You should not do that. You'll forget things. Ha'ochel achar atzmo, alachas kama v'kama. The animal that actually eats the mouse, of course you're going to lose your memory. So you got to be careful. So that's why the chatul doesn't recognize its master. He has no idea what's going on because he eats mice. Okay, what does this mean? I have no idea. So. Why does everyone rule over mice? Why does everybody hate mice? I can think of a few reasons myself. You got a little bit of a phobia there. Okay. So it says the Gemara.
It's the kryptonite.
You never tell someone what your kryptonite is. Because their pathway is a bad pathway. Maihi, what is their bad pathway? Rav Amar afilu glimi gaitzi. They would even chew on, the word gaitzi means to chew on, they'd even chew on a coat. Just talking true. Look in our alleys. They eat through our garbage cans, right? These are rats. They eat through our garbage cans. And then on the top of Yud Gimel Amud Beis, our last turn of the Masechta, Rav Papa Amar afilu shufta mar gaitzi. They even chew on the handle of garden tools of a hoe. There are 5 things that help us. There are 5 things that cause us to forget our learning. Anything that was eaten partially by a mouse or partially by a cat. Anyone who eats the heart of an animal. Anyone who regularly eats olives. If you drink the water from which you washed your body, that's gross. 1 foot on top of the other if you wash your feet that way. If a person who sleeps on top of his clothes. I spoke to my Rebbe about Ragil B'Zeisim, Rabbi Nissel, when I spoke to him a couple months ago about this. And he told me that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach has a psak that if you squeeze the oil of one olive onto another, then you can eat that olive. So all of this is like above our pay grade. I said, what about the olive dip that we see so frequently at people's homes? He says that's not bichlal this. That's totally fine. No problem at all. I also heard in the name of Rav Gedali Dov Schwartz that from age 12 he once heard that he saw this Gemara. He never ate an olive again for the rest of his life. So I've been told. Yeah. Okay. There are 5 things that are good for learning. Pas pechamin. If you have bread that's made from coals. V'kol sheken pechamin atzman. What does that mean? V'kol sheken pechamin atzman.
Eating with coals themselves.
Pas ha'afui b'gecholim.
You eat the coals?
Yeah. What does that mean? Pas ha'afui b'gecholim.
Yeah. It's pas.
I don't know what this means. What does the art scroll say? Does anybody have one?
There's another version.
B'kol shekain pchamin atzman. What does it say there?
And certainly the charcoals themselves.
Okay. That's what I thought the words meant. I just don't know what it means. Who eats charcoal? You know how you can tell when an egg is not yet boiled? If you spin an egg that's not yet boiled. So centrifugal force, my father taught me when I was younger, that when you spin an egg, the yolk goes to one side, the egg stops spinning. Once you boil the egg and it hardens, then it can spin perfectly. So a beta migulgeles is an egg that spins, which means it's partially boiled. And therefore, and if you eat it below melach, if you eat a boiled egg without salt, that is good for your memory. Beharagil b'shemen zayis, the olives are problematic. Olive oil is actually good for you. Beharagil b'yayin uvesamim, for those who are regular with wine and with spices. Ve'ashosamayim shel shiurei isa, someone who drinks water that's left over from making dough. Ve'yeshomer mafat tovel etzba'o b'melach ve'ochel, and even one who dips their finger into salt and licks their finger after dipping it into salt, that also can be good for your memory. Probably not good for your sodium intake, but good for your memory. Haragil b'shemen zayis mesei Rav Yochanan. This idea of the shemen zayis, of the oil being good for you, Rav Yochanan agrees. Rav Yochanan kshem she'zayis meshakeach limud shel shivim shana. Yikes! Just like an olive can cause one to lose their memory for 70 years of learning. This is the recuperation. If one were to eat or drink, I should say, the olive oil, that is very good for you. The wine and the good smells, they made me smart. Uve'achas, it's one. Ketanoi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer achas v'lo shtaim. Rabbi Yossi Omer shtaim v'lo shalosh. So there's a machlokas. When do we say that if a person were to ingest salt, that it's good for you? So some people say it's if you dip one finger in the salt, and others say no, it's only when you dip 2 fingers in the salt. V'simonech kmitza, and the simon is the kmitza. So the kmitza over here is the ring finger. And if you hold down your ring finger, you see that there's 2 shitas. One shita says 1 finger, and the other shita says 2 fingers. So that's how you can remember the machlokas. Or you could just remember that it's 1 versus 2. But this is a nice little, I don't know how these things work. I'm sure there's something going on with the simonim here that are on another level, because this is an odd reference. 1/3 of the way down, Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Asar dvarim kashin l'limud. There are 10 things that are very difficult for your learning. However, tachas ha'afsar ha'gamal, somebody walks under the reins of an animal, of a camel. V'chol shekain tachas gamal atzmo, all the more so if you walk under an animal. Ve'over bein shnei gmalim, someone who walks in between 2 camels. Ve'over bein shtei nashim, that is also bad for someone's learning if they walk between 2 women. Ve'isha ha'overes bein shnei anashim, and a woman who goes between 2 men. I was just realizing, who's that bad for? A woman walks between 2 men?
For the woman.
What?
Then we have for a man to walk with you.
Absolutely. Right, so what, right.
Yeah. Just also like, what's she learning?
Right.
This is Gemara culture. I'm saying that it's not our modern era. Okay, I think that's what it means. Over mitachas reach rash al nevela, someone who walks through the smell of a decomposing animal. Over tachas hagesher shlo over tachav mayim mem yom, someone who walks under a bridge where there hasn't been water for 40 days. Ve'ochel pas shelo bishel kol torcho, somebody who eats undercooked, underbaked challah. Ve'ochel basar mizuam al listron, somebody who ate meat from the spoon that serves that's stirred the pot. Ve'ashose me'amas hamayim ha'overes beveis hakvaros, someone who drinks from water that runs through a beis hakvaros. Where my brother's buried, they have that. They have a huge, in West Lawn, they have like a huge thing there of water. So if you drink from that, don't drink from that. It's tacky anyways, but don't drink from that. That's what the Gemara says. It's mishakech limuda. V'mistakil b'fnei amei, somebody who looks at the face of someone who has died. V'yeshomer mafa korek sav shal gabe hakever. This is a well-known one. Somebody who reads whatever's written on the actual tombstone. That's also seemingly not recommended. First of the very long lines, Yud Gimel Amud Beis, Tana Rabbanan. These are the halachos of standing up for different tiers of the greats within our community. And says the Gemara as follows: like the judge, right? You walk into court, except that here we're talking about a nasi, lahavdil mamish. So when a nasi walks in, everybody stands until he says sit down. When the Av Bezdin walks in, so let's say he walks through the middle of the base medrash. So then the people sitting on the aisle stand up for him, and they stand up until he sits in his place. When the Chacham walks in, this is kind of like what we do actually. When the Rav walks in, let's say we're all in the middle of learning. So as they walk by your table, you stand up. I don't think in our shul, I don't think we're makbid enough to stand up for our rabbanim when they get aliyahs. I think we should definitely be better about that. But la halacha l'maisa, it's really only within Dal Ramos. It's just a p'chisas kavod that we don't stand up for them. But it's not actually usher because the halachos are only in very narrow settings that we're chayiv to stand up for them. B'nei chachamim v'talmidei chachamim. So let's say you have the Rav, you have Rabbi Shechter, Rabbi Robinson, their sons, or the children of Talmidei Chachamim. So says the Gemara, Bnei Chachamim v'Talmidei Chachamim. Says the Gemara, Bizman she'Rabim tzrichim. When these Bnei Chachamim are needed, or the students of Chachamim are needed, Mafsiin al Roshei Ha'am. They're allowed to walk through the base medrash. People back in the day, remember, they were greatly sitting on the floor. They didn't have a lot of pews back in the day. They were sitting on the floor. So that's this language. We've seen it before in Shas of Mafsin al Roshei Ha'am. Doesn't mean you were stepping on their heads, obviously. It just means you would make them move out of the way in order for you to get by. If they had to leave the base medrash to go to the bathroom, they can come back. If the children of Talmidei Chachamim were appointed as leaders over a congregation, if they were good learners, they knew how to listen to a shiur, then they would go sit in the front row, and their backs would be to the people, meaning they were front row facing their father, and they were learning. That's if they were learners. When the Bnei Talmidei Chachamim really don't know how to learn, if they weren't learned, they would go sit by their father, but they would face the people, and they couldn't really follow the shiur. As we learned the other day, when someone's teaching, when your Rebbe is there, you're supposed to watch their face as they teach. This is also true in the Beis HaMishnah, also know some snifin, that the sons of the Talmidei Chachamim, they get snifin, they get these extra little tables put next to, and they're added onto the table to sit next to their father. We said, we said that if a person, if the Bnei Talmidei Chachamim had to go to the bathroom, they can come right back. That's only true if they had to urinate. If they had to defecate, they should have been more careful. What
does that mean, returning to their seat?
So that's what we said, is that the children of Talmidei Chachamim could sit next to their father in the base medrash, even though they weren't the biggest Talmid Chacham in the room. They could sit next to their father. However, that's only true that they could go back to their seats if when they left was to go to the bathroom to urinate. But if they had to go for Gdolim, so then they could not. Lo. And the Gemara says, you should have checked yourself. By the way, this is found in the Svarim and in the Halachic Svarim, that before one goes to Mincha, Mav Shachar, whatever you're doing, ask yourself if you have to go to the bathroom. Save yourself a little bit of time. And by the way, if you have like regular food habits, you usually know when you have to go to the bathroom. Your body regulates. One should train themselves to go to the bathroom early in the morning and in the evening, so they don't have to walk a far distance from wherever they are in order to go to the bathroom. We're a very weak constitution people, and therefore, if the Bnei Talmidei Chachamim left, even for Gedolim, they can come back to their seat, no problem. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Tzadok, Omer, Af beBeis HaMishta, also know some snifin. They said the same idea, that they get in the Beis HaMishta, they also get to sit next to their fathers attached to the table, and that is all of this about the standing up. And now we're going to have a little bit of a connected sugya over here, a story. One that will take us close to the end of the day. Amar Rava, I'm sorry, I didn't finish the last little chunk here. Amar Rava b'chai avim bifnei avim. It's only true that the sons get these perks when their father is alive and when they're in front of their father. Amar Rabbi Yochanan b'mei Rashbag nishneis Mishnah zu. This Mishnah was taught in the times of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Nasi, Reb Meir Chacham, Reb Nasan Abbezin. So these are the three Jews we're talking about. Reb Shimon was a Nasi, Reb Meir was a Chacham, Reb Nasan was Yabbezin. Rashbag Hasam. When Rashbag was there, everybody would stand up in front of him. He was the Nasi. Reb Meir v'Rav Nasan. When Reb Meir and Rav Nasan would walk in, same thing. So Amar Rashbag, I don't understand. They're not the same as them. I'm a Nasi. They're not Nasiim. So he says, Amar Rashbag, lo ba'o lemehave hekera bein dili v'dihu. There should be a difference. These people are not keeping halacha properly. He wasn't worried about his own cover. These people are above that. They weren't worried about their own cover. But he's saying you're not following halacha correctly. These people you should not be standing up for. You should be, or again, however you stand up for them, depending on what gather they are. So Tachim Hamas Nisa. That's why he wrote this brisa. That's what he did. That's the brisa that starts at the first of the long line that he wrote because of this concern. But Hahu Yoma, that day, on some particular day, the Gemara says that so he made this Tanai. But remember that the day he made the Tanai, this new takana, on that day that he instituted the rule, Lo Havu Rav Meir v'Rav Nasan Hasan. So let's say day one, the Nasi stood up and everyone stood up. On that same day one, Reb Nasan and Reb Meir stood up and everyone stood up. And then Rashbag is like, something's wrong here. So he made a takana. On day two, they instituted the rule. On that day, Reb Nasan and Reb Meir weren't there. So then Lamachar Kiyas, when they showed up, Chazu de lo kamu mikamau k'de regila milsa. They were used to people standing up for them. And now they walked in the base medrash and nobody stood up for them. Now at weddings, we stand up for anything that walks down the aisle. Halacha l'maisa, very, very, very little of that is actually required. Very, very little. Usually, as a rule of thumb for Talmidei Chachamim, it's only within Daled Amos. It's good to be makbid. It's good to be makbid. It's not halachic. We should just know where the line in the sand is. So now Rav Meir, Rav Nasim walk in the base medrash. They're expecting everyone to stand up like they always do. They just get a little nod from these people. The half. No, it's not real. That wasn't the real deal. Amrei, my high. What's the deal? Why isn't everybody standing up for this? So Amrlu, Achitakin Rashbag. Rashbag just drafted a new brisa. You guys have been demoted. It's not actually true that they've been demoted. It's just that halacha is being kept now. Amar le Rav Meir Rav Nasan. I have a great idea. Anachacham be'atav bezdin. Well, how about niskin milsa kila didan? Let's put matters into our own hands. My na'avile. What should we do to him? To Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Neimale gali uksin delesle. We know he's never learned uksin. That's what they said about Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Hard to imagine that he's never learned uksin. But says the Gemara, they knew that Rab Shimon ben Gamliel never learned uksin. So they wanted to trip him up. They wanted to say, oh, maybe we'll ask him to teach us uksin delesle, and he won't be able to teach us uksin. And v'kevan de lo gamar, since he doesn't know uksin, neimale, we should then say the pasuk, mi emalel gvrus Hashem yashmiya kol tilasu. Who can give praise of the strengths of Hashem and make heard all of his praises? Who is a person who's fitting to be saying the words of Hashem? Only Mishiyachol Hashmiya Kol Tilosov. So we're going to ask him if he knows Maseches Uktzin, and he'll say, I'm sorry, I don't know it. And we'll say, you're not pasnish, you're not allowed to be a leader, you're out. And then Ne'avre, then we'll get rid of him. And V'have Ana Av Bezdin V'at Nasi. Where it's a coup. We're going to be great. The problem was Sham Inhu Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi. Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi lived at that time. He was a Tana, or he lived at that time, one of the two. Omar Dilma Chas v'Shalom Asya Milsa Lidei Kisufa. I'm nervous that what Rav Nasan and what Rav Meir are doing are going to lead to embarrassment for Rav Shimon ben Gamliel because he's never learned Uktzin. So here's what Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi did. Azal Yasve Achore Elise de Rashbag. He sat kind of like back to back with Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. And what Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi did is Pashat Garas V'tana. And he started talking out loud, Maseches Uktzin, first Mishnah all the way to the end, A to Z. And he kept repeating it over and over again. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was thinking to himself, it's so odd that Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi is belting out the Mishnah from Maseches Uktzin. Amai dekama, what's going on over here? Sounds like this is so weird. There must be something going on in the base medrash. So Yov Daite Garsa. So he listened and he learned and he ingested all the material he needed to ingest for Maseches Uktzin. The Machar, the next day, Amrulay, Rab Meir and Rav Nasan go over to Rashbag and they say, Nesi Marvin Isne Uktzin. No, teach me some Uktzin. And they thought that they were going to get this answer of deer in the headlights from Rashbag that I've never done Maseches Uktzin. I'm out. So Pasach v'Amar. They say Rashbag responded in kind. First Mishnah talks about this. Second Mishnah talks about that. Fully trained, ready to go because Rabbi Yaakov ben Karshi taught it to him. Basar de'okim Amar Louis said to them, you would have embarrassed me if I hadn't learned it. What are you doing? So Rashbag threw them out. Pakid ve'afkinhu mibei medrasha. Goodbye. You can sit outside by the tables in the rain. So when they had questions, they would write the questions on a piece of paper and they would be thrown into the base medrash. They have a mifrik. If those who knew how to answer, they would answer. And the lo have a mifrik, kisve piruki b'shadu. Then Rav Meir and Rav Nasan were sitting outside. If the answer wasn't clear in the base measures, they would then write the answers in and throw it. They would write the answers and then throw them in. You got these two giants in Torah of Nas and Rameir. They're sitting outside there. Oh, let them back in the base measures. Why is this even happening? Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Ne'alinu. You can bring them back in. Mihu. However, niknesinhu. We're going to give them the following knas. To lo nemru shmaisa mishmaihu. That their quotes are not going to be said in a normal way in Shas. Asiku le Reb Meir acherim. Acherim omrim, right? So
Now all this is gonna make sense as you see it, right?
through Shas, yeah. What's odd about this is that you're saying that we've given her, you see Meir everywhere, but this is like his moniker a little bit. Could be a moment in time, yeah. Rav Meir? Fascinating. I don't think so, because it's at the same time as Rashbag. Yeah, we'll look it up. Well, the Rav Nasan yesh omrim. That night or soon thereafter, achbu lahu b'chel maihu. Rav Meir and Rav Nasan had the same exact dream. Zilu faisu l'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Go apologize for what you've done. You almost staged a coup. Go apologize. It's not right. Rav Nasan azal, Rav Meir lo azal. Rav Nasan did the apologies. Rav Meir did not. Omar, why did Rav Meir not do it? He said, Divrei chalomos l'ma'alam u'lo moridin. It's just a dream. They're meaningless. I don't need to bend over backwards and start apologizing to people because of a dream. He also Reb Nasan, when Reb Nasan went over to Rashbag to apologize, Amarle Rashbag, Ni de ahani loch kamra de avuch. I understand that the respect of your father, lemahave av bezdin, but shavinach nami nasi. You also wanted to be a nasi. This was the musar that Rashbag gave back. Stay in your lane. You don't need to be a nasi. You have a wonderful role in the community. You don't need to be doing more. Masni le Rebbe le Reb Shimon Berei acherim omrim. This is an example of an application of this. That acherim omrim. Other people say. Who did we say that was? That's Rav Meir. Acherim omrim ilu haya tmura lo haya karev. We're not going to get into the details of tmura. We'll get there in a couple months. But this is basically saying that if there was a particular exchange, lo haya karev, it would not be brought as a korban. But Omar lo, his son Reb Shimon says back to Rebbe, mihem halalu she. Mimehem anushosim, we're drinking their waters. Ushmosam einanu mazkirin, but we can't say their names. So again, that's what Rav Shimon says to Rebbe. So says the Gemara on the top of the last Amud in not just Maseches Horiyos, but in all of Seder Nezikin. Baruch Hashem, we're right at the finish line here. Amar lei, b'nei adam shebikshu lakor pevodcha uchvod beis avicha. These people were against you. They were against our family. Amarle, the son says back to him, Gam ahavtam, gam snesim, gam kinesim kvar avda. These people are gone from the world. What are you so worried about? Just bring them back in. Amarle, Rabbi said, how yev tamu, you're right, the enemies are gone, but charvos lanetzach, but their damage has lasted a long time. Amarle, hani mili hechade ahanu ma'asayu, but Rabbanan, lo ahanu ma'asayu, they didn't actually do anything in the end. They tried to do something, but they didn't actually do anything. So says the Gemara, Rebbe capitulated to his son's demands. Hadar asnile amru mishum Reb Meir. What? That's what he was. Ilu haya tmura lo haya karev. So he brought his name back, but it was mishum Reb Meir. But look at this. He says, Amarava. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's just keep reading. Amarava afilu Rebbe de an visana hu tana amru mishum Reb Meir. Amar Reb Meir lo amar. He wouldn't say Amar Reb Meir. So remember, Rebbe lived in the late 100s, early 200. He died in 220 of our common era. So from his lifetime, for all the Mishnayos that says that Amar Mishum Rav Meir is because of this exact framing over here. That Rebbe, once he found out what happened, he wouldn't refer to Rav Meir in a direct way. It was always Mishum Rav Meir. A little bit of just a slight remembrance of what actually happened.
When you say something in the name of somebody else,
Yeah.
There's conflicting things you're going on.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want to give up that.
Shimon ben Gamliel did not seem to balk at it at the bottom of the Amud base. Yeah. So what we're about to learn now, this last little sugya, is a very, very well-known machlokas. What is better, to be a Sinai or to be an Oker Harim? Is it better to know the herchev of halacha, or is it better to know the depth of halacha? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yochanan, Pligu bar Rav Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbanan, Chad Amar Sinai adif, v'Chad Amar Oker Harim adif. One says that it's better to be a Sinai, it's better to know the breadth of Mishnayos and Braisos. V'Chad Amar Oker Harim adif. It's better to know, it's better to be the brain that can really figure out the difficult Rambams, the Stiras in Rambams, the Lamdus, the Eon, Brisker Rav, and all the difficult stuff. Rav Yosef was a Sinai. Rav Yosef had the Herchev of Shas. Rabba was Oker Harim. Rabba and Rav Yosef lived at the same time. Shalchu letamon, Ezeman Kodem, they sent it to Eretz Yisrael. Which one is better? Shalchu lehu, Eretz Yisrael sent back Sinai Odif. It's better to be a Sinai. The Amar Mar Hakol Tzrichin Lemare Chatya. Everyone needs the master of all of the wheat. Again, a little bit of a just a phraseology. Rabbi Yosef still, even though the Sinai is better, he didn't become the Rosh Yeshiva. Malach Rabba Esrin V'Tartin Shnin, and Rabba was the one in charge of the base medrash for 22 years. V'Hadar Malach Rabbi Yosef, and only after Rabba, I think after Rabba died actually, only after Rabba died did Rabbi Yosef take over. And listen to the humility of Rabbi Yosef. B'chol Shanei de Malach Rabba, for all the years that Rabba was king, Rav Yosef, afilu umna levese lo cholif. He wouldn't even bring over to his house a blood letter because that was like a sign of chashivus. That's he didn't want to leave over any implications that he had anything over Rabbah, who was his counterpart. They were very similar in age. They were both 3rd century Amoraim. In regards to Sinai, I had a conversation with Rabbi Nissel this week while he was here. I said, Rabbi Nissel, I've been thinking, what should I do after I finish the cycle of Daf Yomi? Should I do it again? Should I spend more time learning Be'iyun? Rabbi Nissel said to me, and I'm basically quoting word for word, I will never get out of Gehenna if I tell you to stop teaching Daf Yomi.
You're on for track number 2.
That is correct. I'm on for track number 2. So he really, and he said it so deadpan. It was a little scary. I'm like, what? Yeah, he's like, I will never get out of Gehenna. And I asked him about that later. He's like, yeah, there's no question about it. I'm like, okay. That conversation was pretty short, actually. I thought it was going to be longer. Then he told me that I was never going to be Rav Chaim Kanievsky, which I was pretty upset about. He's like, you have wonderful parents, very wonderful parents. He was very complimentary about you, but he's like, you didn't grow up in the Stipler's home where you were like drinking mishnayos with your mother's milk. It's just a different world, whole different world. Yeah, it's just And then he told me his greatest regret in life is wasted time. It's a very big musar. Okay. Let's finish up the Masechta and the Seder. Abai v'Rava v'Reb Zera v'Rabba bar Masna. All of them, Habu Yasve v'Habu Tzriche Resha. They needed to pick a head of the yeshiva. So what were they going to do? Amrei Kol Amar Milsa v'Lo Mifrach leHabe Resha. Anyone who says something below Mifrach and it can't be broken, it can't ask a question against you, then they should be the king. They should be the Rosh Yeshiva. The Kulu Ifrach. Everyone said something and their comments were uprooted, but the Abai lo Ifrach. So Chazia Rava says, can't be, Rabba was, I don't think Rabba was alive anymore. Chazia Rava, le'abaye dikabo resha, that he picked up his head a little bit, kind of saw that this was what was going on. Rashi, outer margin, 4 lines down, Chazia le'abaye dikabo resha, kloma ra'alo haramas rosh, he picked up his head a little bit, he kind of realized, I think I just became the Rosh Yeshiva. Amarle Nachmeni, he says to him, Nachmeni, pasach ve'ema, it's time for you to give shiur. Yibailahu, the last question of the Masechta. It ends a little bit with the climax. It ends with a teku. Yibailahu, Reb Zera v'Rabba bar Masna. Hai minayhu adif. Reb Zera charif umakshe. Reb Zera was very sharp and asked great questions. V'Rabba bar of Masna masun umasik. He was masun umasik. I guess he was very patient and was able to give psakim. And the answer is teku. Hadron alach Kohen Mashiach was slikala Maseches Horiyos, and I'll just add in the Seder Nezikin as well. A Mazel Tov, Baruch Hashem. I think we're at almost 2,100 blad and shas. I think we're like 2,080 something. Mir Hashem, tomorrow night we'll be having a siyum I'll be sponsoring this one. Anyone who would like to join, please let me know. No monies to be given over. I'm getting some requests for some milchiks. I don't know if anybody wants milchiks. Maybe we should do two different tables. Should I just buy you a slice of pizza? It's probably going to be there. No. Yeah?
What?
That's not what I have in my notes. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, we'll stop right here. Mazel tov. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
We finished on time. I think you would.